Rise and shine to the morning momentum, your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines, today being a Friday, the 13th of September 2024. Welcome to the broadcast. My name is Alfonsoh. Use the hashtag Younib MEDIA TV. Use the hashtag the morning momentum at Younib MEDIA TV at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the papers this morning. We start with the Standard newspaper. Uncovered Adani and his Kenya deals. Now, even before JKIA deal fires are extinguished, questions swirl as details emerge in the Senate that the controversial Indian conglomerate is eyeing yet another multi-billion shilling deal shrouded in secrecy with State Farm Ketraco. So what exactly is Asia's second richest man up to? That story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5. Statistics show that in the year 1988, that is when Guatman Adani founded Adani Group initially as a commodity trading before expanding into import and export business and diversifying its portfolio to coal, oil ports, logistics, power and commodities, among others. 10 trillion shillings is his net worth, which translates to over 80 billion US dollars. Now, the cost of power infrastructure upgrade proposal by Adani Energy Solutions Limited, approved by the government, is 117 billion shillings, and that aims to construct 371 kilometers of transmission lines and 5 substations in eastern and western Kenya as part of public-private partnership. Now, 30 years is the duration. Adani deal is, wants to run JKIA in takeover deal that will see it upgrade the airport, including construction of a second runway and a new passenger terminal. 230 billion shillings, which translates to about 1.85 billion US dollars, is the estimated amount that Adani Group intends to pump into Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to expand its premier gateway in the controversial deal. So more of that is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5. On page 6, 7 and 8, 2 years of President Ruto, Kenya Kwanza's broken promises, fighting a crisis. On September 13th, 2022, William Samoei Ruto was sworn in as Kenya's 5th president after a hard-fought and contested election. Beginning today, we reflect on his tumultuous presidency and how Kenya has changed for better or worse. Let's move on and take a look at page 2 of the Standard now. Villagers block Gen Z protesters from entering Endarasha school. Now, demonstrators were demanding answers to questions about the fire that killed 21 pupils, but the local community said they would not allow outsiders to hold a demo in their village. On page 3 this morning, 4 armed men threatened us at Shakahola Forest, witnesses tell court. Now, Fondo told Mombasa Chief Magistrate they found 2 women whose legs were tied together. Mackenzie and 94 others have denied killing 238 people between 2022 and 2023. Let's move on and take a look at page 4. Onyonka reveals another secret deal between state and Adani. Indian company is taking over running of JKIA. Details have emerged of another pact with Ketraco. Ketraco is the Kenya Electric and Transmission Company. Now, on page 5 is the Adani deal, Kenya Kwanza flagship fraud. President ought to promote 3 main interests: national security, economic, and government and governance interests. Anything else is akin to auctioning the country. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 5. Let's move on and take a look at Kenya Kwanza's 2 years in the government. Campaign pledges prove a tall order for Kenya Kwanza. Ruto sauntered to State House on the back of many pledges as a fellow hustler. 2 years later, some are still born, while others are slowly becoming a mirage. Now, for 2 years, President has been fighting one fire after another. He paused frequently as he recited his oath of office, taking in the magnitude of his new role and reveling in the cheers of thousands of Kenyans witnessing the historic day. Some of the promises include a commission of inquiry on state capture to investigate Uhuru's administration, reduction of borrowing by 300 billion shillings, implementation of two-thirds gender rule, 50% of cabinet to be women, completion of Uhuru's legacy project, which is the 54 kilometers Mau Mau Road, and reduction of the high cost of fuel. So more of that is beefed up for you on page 6. On page 7, counties, the epicenter of project launches. Now, President Ruto's numerous visits to launch and relaunch projects raise eyebrows. Political observers have questioned motive of the tours amid austerity measures. In 2023-2024 visits and the number of days, on 1st of September, 2nd of September 2024, there was a 4-day development tour of Siaya, Migori, Homa Bay, and Kisumu counties. Now, August 26, 2024, 4-day tour of Kakamega, Bungoma, Busia, and Vihiga counties. August 7th, 2024, 4-day tour of Embu, Meru, Kirinyaga, and Tharaka Nithi counties. February 16th, 2024, Murang'a, Nyeri, and Kiambu counties were also visited, and the list continues on page 7 of the Standard this morning. On page 8, return of Wangila squads, extrajudicial killings and abductions. Most Kenyans believe the country's democracy and freedoms are deteriorating every day. Kenya Kwanza regime rose to power on promise of upholding rule of law and human rights. That story is beefed up for you on page 8. Also, a sick nation, are Kenyans healthier? Progress and pitfalls in health reforms. 2 years into the Kenya Kwanza administration, questions linger over whether Kenyans are healthier than they were before September 2022. With a focus on the health sector and the much promoted universal health coverage, reforms have been initiated, but the challenges remain. Let's move on and take a look at page 10. City chaos, Gachagua and Sakaja clash over traders' relocation. The DP urged the governor to meet the traders in a bid to resolve the relocation stalemate. Sources say sharing of illegal proceeds from the market is also a bone of contention. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. On page 11, court attempt. Will police boss appear in court for sentencing? Justice Lawrence Mugambi on Monday found Masengeli guilty of contempt of court. Lawyer says effecting the arrest warrants against acting police boss may prove to be difficult. That story is beefed up for you on page 11. Now, Masengeli the Wanderlust. When he was defying the order to appear, police on their social media pages posted Masengeli in Mombasa last week, where he was allegedly attending a meeting with the region's police bosses. On Sunday, September 8th, Masengeli attended a concert held in solidarity with Haitians at the Uhuru Gardens. The matter was raised in court the Monday after it emerged that he could not make it since he was held up in security-related meetings. On that day and Tuesday, according to the social media posts, Masengeli toured the northeastern region part of the country where he was by Director of Criminal Investigations, Mohammed Amin, among other police bosses. So this is a series of events that were unfolding following his, missing the court summons. And then on Monday, eventually, he was found guilty of contempt of court. Now, on page 12, Uasin seeks to join 1.1 billion botched education airlifts case. Now, Governor Jonathan B's administration says it has vested interest in the case. They argue that it involves public property and assets within the county. At a glance, 1.1 billion shillings is the money allegedly stolen in the program. 202 witnesses, including B and his deputy, have been lined up to testify against the senator. In total, parents paid a fee of 1.177 million shillings. 202 students traveled to Finland and paid 39,000 each for visa processing, and 45 students traveled to Canada and paid 49,000 each for visa processing. 180 victims who are students and parents will testify in the case. On page 13, state launches school feeding plan with local farmers as the suppliers. Program entails sourcing foods from local farmers, cooperatives, and money will be channeled directly to the farmers bypassing head teachers. Now, let's shift gears and take a look at expert opinion. Are you happy with Ruto's performance so far? Today marks exactly 2 years since he assumed office. Now, Boniface Manyala says yes. Media and political strategist. He says country is on an upward trajectory. On the contrary, Jimmy Nicholas, political analyst, says no, the president has disappointed many people. Now, let's move on and take a look at the county news on the Standard this morning. County closes year with no debts as suppliers paid within a month. Governor Wamatangi said he got 7 billion unpaid bills. He said this hinders development and the county services. So pending bills is 7 billion shillings, and that is Kimani Wamatangi was confronted with in 2022 when he was elected as the county chief. He says he came up with a formula to repay and now stands at below 5 billion shillings. Let's take a look at business news. Kenya's debt sustainable despite bordering distress, says Kipra. Think tank documents public debt to be 10.3 trillion shillings at the close of the 2022-2023 financial year. Now, briefly in infrastructure, tech firm in EA Network Upgrade, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, a business unit of Cassava Technologies, has announced the upgrade of its 1,300-kilometer fiber optic route connecting Mombasa and Busia, bridging additional multi-terabyte capacity and additional resilience to the region. It matters loans. Mogo shields clients from forex fluctuations. Now, Asset Financial Mojo has announced that all loan repayments will now be made in Kenya shillings to protect customers from forex fluctuations. In matters trade, Russia Expo looks to deepen ties with Africa. Kenya will be among counties seeking to benefit from new technologies in agriculture in Russia, in an agribusiness exhibition event that will bring global economies together next month. Let's move on and take a look at world news. 9 candidates in race to become Japan's next prime minister. Leading the polls are Shinjiro Kyozumi, a former environment minister, and Shigeru Ishiba. Whoever wins a leadership race will succeed unpopular Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. In Bangladesh, teams to reform sectors formed. Bangladeshi interim government chief advisor Mohammed Yunus has taken action to protect the rule of law and bolster the crisis-ridden economy since he took office. As part of his bids to reform Bangladesh, Yunus on Wednesday announced the government has formed 6 commissions to reform the judiciary, election system, administration, police, anti-corruption commission, and the constitution. In Sudan, UN official warns of hunger crisis. Now, a United Nations official warned on Wednesday that Sudan's food security situation demands urgent action due to ongoing conflict, heavy rains, and flooding. In Tanzania, opposition protests abductions. Tanzania's main opposition party has threatened to launch protests over killings and abductions of its members. The Chadema party said Wednesday that it would take to the streets in Dar es Salaam on September 23rd unless recent disappearances were investigated and missing members brought back alive or dead. Let's move on and take a look at sports news now on the Standard this morning. Verstappen, Red Bull seek to bounce back in Baku. World champion has not registered a win in the last 6 races. Dutchman arrives in Baku with a 62-point lead in the Drivers' Championship. That story is beefed up for you on page 29, and it's all about the Formula 1. So now let's move on and take a look at page 31. Stars eye glory as Diamond League final gets underway. Kenyan charges will feature in the women's 8,000 meters and men's 3,000 meters steeplechase, 5,000 meters and 1,500 meters on day one this evening. Three-time Olympic champion Faith Kipyegon will highlight the second day of the finals tomorrow. That story is beefed up for you on page 31. On the cover page of the Standard this morning, Ronaldo says Ten Hag's attitude too negative for Manchester United. Former Manchester United player believes his former club needs sweeping changes. Portugal captain fell out with Ten Hag before his second spell at Old Trafford ended in 2022. So with that story of Manchester United, we take a quick break here on the Morning Momentum. See you on the other side of this broadcast. Welcome back to the Morning Momentum. If you're just joining us, you are rolling with the host with the most, Alfonsoh is my name. Use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Younib MEDIA TV at Alfonsoh Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the Daily Nation. Gachagua isolated. Now, some 48 ruling party MPs from Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's backyard yesterday vowed to rally behind Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki as the fight for the control of the mountain escalates. So the mountain is becoming slippery for Gachagua. New developments further complicate the relationship between DP and his boss. That story is briefed up for you on page 4 and page 5. On page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning, Ruto at 2, the hits and the misses. All that on page 7. On the cover page, a striking nation inside Kenya's wave of protests. We'll take a look at that in a few. Let's get another top story here on page 6. New case filed against Adani JKIA deal. Activists and jurists challenge plan to lease out airport. On page 2, this man Masengeli. Top police job interviews, Kotai and State House meeting. That story is beefed up for you on page 2. Let's move on. Get up close and candid with the Daily Nation. On page 2, Masengeli interviews, Kotai, State House meeting and defiance. Commission declines to confirm Masengeli's interview score. And acting police boss is to be sentenced today for contempt after defying 7 court orders in abduction case. The big question remains, will he appear for the sentencing? Now, let's take a look at page 3. I made a killing at Shakahola before deadly fasting started. Mackenzie and his co-accused are charged with killing over 400 members of his church. Witness says he noted decline in business, but it was a while before he learned followers had been ordered to fast. Let's move on and take a look at page 4. Gachagua isolated as more Mount Kenya MPs rally behind Kindiki Allies of DP dismissed their colleagues and accused them of political posturing, claiming they were not listening to the ground. New development also complicates DP's relationship with President Ruto. 48 UDA lawmakers vow to bypass the DP's office in official matters as they make Nyahururu declaration. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Now let's move on and take a look at page 6. Gashoka lobby join fight against state plan to lease JKIA. Indian firm Adani wants to take over management of airport under a 30-year build, operate, transfer deal. Petitioners say process has so far breached legal requirements. Let's take a look at page 7. Kenya Kwanza hits and misses as it marks 2 years in office. The alliance swept to power by promising to uplift the livelihood of hustlers and cutting taxes. Smarting from recent youth-led nationwide protests, it's a mixed bag of fulfilled and broken election promises for President William Ruto's administrations. In the manifesto promise, there was 250,000 housing units per annum. That is 500,000 in 2 years that he has been in office so far, if he was to go by what he promised. The achievement in the 2 years, only 94,128 units have been built so far. Now, in this 100,000 jobs for TVET graduates, 113,994 jobs have been achieved. Now, in the State Capture Commission, that one is still pending. The Hustler Fund, 50 billion shillings every year, 54.9 billion shillings have been disbursed. So it ought to have been 100 billion shillings for the 2 years. Now, launch 19 county aggregation industrial parks. That one is incomplete. Now, digitization and automation of 80% of government services. Services in eCitizen increased from 350 to 20,855. Installation of free Wi-Fi hotspots in markets and bus stops have been achieved also. Now, reducing the cost of maize production, the achievement is provided 8.6 million bags of subsidized fertilizer. The cost of fertilizer reduced from 6,000 to 2,500 shillings per bag. Now, those are the achievements versus the manifesto. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 8. Kangudo Road shift won't do, city traders say. Now, battles between the informal traders and policemen paralyze transport towards eastern parts of the city. Irate dealers light bonfires, block Haile Selassie Avenue, Landis, and Jogo Roads as they battle county officers. That story is beefed up for you on page 8. Let's move on and take a look at page 10. Breast cancer treatment found to be ineffective. Treatment was introduced a decade ago, giving hope to patients with solid tumors. Previous clinical trials have constantly failed to provide evidence that the treatment works. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. Let's move on and take a look at page 12. Trauma of 2023 Azimio protests as 29 file case against the state. Families of those shot say the victims were not part of the demonstration called by opposition. Police accused of high-handedness when breaking up demonstrations in Kisumu. That story is beefed up for you on page 12. Now, let's move on swiftly and take a look at the expert opinion. Here's how to get the most out of Starlink's entry. With Starlink's global infrastructure and pricing, local companies may find it difficult to compete. Now, let's work to prevent suicide. Support systems are the cornerstone to suicide prevention. Those are sentiments by Purity Nthiana. Now, with that, we move on and take a look at more stories. The DN2 Voice article is also beefed for you. This morning, it's all about the invisible epidemic, unveiling Kenya's maternal health crisis that claims thousands of lives annually, and survivors have called for systemic reforms to promote quality care for mothers and newborns. Now, let's take a look at county news on the Daily Nation this morning. Drones to deliver drugs to hospitals in Kericho. The innovative technology has been successful in Ghana and Rwanda. The command center in Chemelil serves 14 counties, the firm says. Now, in Lamu, leaders warned against inciting violence. A dispute between Lamu and Garissa counties over ownership of a coastline on the Kenya-Somalia border has escalated, with government warning politicians against incitement. Briefly, in Mombasa County, Shakahola women reject medicine. Sikh detainees linked to the Shakahola deaths are refusing medical attention. Authorities at Shimolatewa Women's Prison told a court in Mombasa on Wednesday. In Turkana West bears brand of trachoma TB. Trachoma and tuberculosis are spreading rapidly in Turkana West, the sub-county hosting Kakuma and Kalobeyei refugee camps. The prevalence rate of trachoma in Turkana West is 11.5%, far more than World Health Organization's normal rate of 5%. Now, let's move on and take a look at international news. Gaza child amputee dreams of flying planes. Now, nearly 3,000 aid workers have been killed in Gaza since October 7, 2023. School psychologist describes Ajur as a source of inspiration. Now, that story is beefed up for you on page 25. In Khartoum, UN warns of hunger in Sudan. A UN official said on Wednesday that the food security situation in Sudan demands urgent action due to ongoing war, heavy rains, and flooding. FAO Assistant Director General Abdullahi Hakim Elwar issued the statement in Port Sudan. Also, U.S. supports permanent UN Security Council seats for Africa. The United States supports creating 2 permanent United Nations Security Council seats for Africa and 1 to be rotated among small island developing states, U.S. Ambassador to the UN Linda Thomas-Greenfield says. Now, let's move on and take a look at business news. 60 SACCOs bleed 970 million shillings in deposits on member exits. Now, apathy and dissatisfaction creep into segment. Regulator steps in to stem rising tide that threatens to sink the crucial sector. Now, in other business news, KRA cargo clearance time down on advanced paperwork. The Kenya Revenue Authority slashed the time it took for its customs agents to release imported goods from different entry points by more than half, or slightly over 2 days, in the financial year ending in June. Now, briefly, banking, DTB expands to Bondo in Siaya County. In motoring, Crown Motors targets electric bikes market. Crown Motors Group is eyeing the electric two-wheeler market, hoping to ride on demand by players in the e-commerce and last-mile deliveries business. So with that story of Crown Motors and electric vehicles, let's take a look at sports news on the Daily Nation this morning. We start with golf. Last chance to grab Nation Classic Grand Finale slots. Ex-Boston Marathon champion Moses Tanui in the mixed at 9-hole course. This season's 4th and final qualifying round of long-running series tees off this weekend at Eldoret. Now, Cheptegei to be given a soldier's farewell at burial in Uganda tomorrow. Rebecca Cheptegei, Ugandan women's marathon record holder who died after being set alight by her ex-boyfriend, will be given a soldier's farewell when she is buried at her father's home at Kapkoros in Bukwo district, Uganda tomorrow. Now, let's move on and take a look at page 34. How a knockout blow in the ring ended one career and gave rise to another. Veteran Kenyan professional golfer Kasuku has coached and nurtured current crop of players. That story is beefed up for you on page 34. Let's take a look at page 35. Onana. Cameroon only gives a hoot about Kenya. Engine Firat charges top Group J with 4 points, same as the 5-time champions. That story is beefed up for you on page 35. Lastly, on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning, Kenya reduced to a country of strikes. Now, boycott, teachers, airport workers, doctors, civil servants, and many others have an axe to grind with the government. Rights groups estimate that 60 people died and many were injured in Gen Z protests. That story is beefed up for you on the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. So, is Kenya being reduced to a country of strike? That story brings us to the end of today's session of the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much for choosing the Morning Momentum and Younib TV at large. Our heartfelt gratitude goes to you, our audience, for the immense support you are giving us. Thank you so much. Gratitude also goes to all those who made this broadcast a success, the Chief Controller, Anifa, Kavira, and behind the lens, Raphael, Wangila. I have been your host, Alfonsoh. Enjoy your weekend. See you on Monday, same time, same place.